So here's the input text type in which we can certainly enter a certain kind of text, and here the whatsoever you are going to enter will not be shown to the user. You can easily find a submit and reset button over here. Now reset button is useful when you are clicking on it, it's going to reset the values of the input type. Add checkboxes and how you can add a radio button. The point of caution Hey guys, I'm Amit Kumar and welcome to this video in which we are going to talk about HTML input types. And guys, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you want to stay updated with proper Salesforce tutorials and want to watch more tutorials, make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. Also, if you have thoughts or question, drop it in the comments. I would love to hear from you and promise I will read every single one. Thank you so much guys, and now you can proceed with the video. So here we will actually talk about different values that we can provide to the type attribute of the input element. So one of the value is text. It is used to define a single line text input. So whenever you want to specify a single line text, you use text. And similarly, whenever you want to use a password, you want to use the same as a password field, you specify password as a value to this type. Submit value to this type converts the input element to a button, and that too a submit button. Whereas the reset value converts it into a button that will be a reset button. Form data is submitted to the handler when the submit button is clicked. Now the handler is nothing but the server side script which handles the data. And at the same time, when you are using reset button and clicking on the reset button, it resets all the value, and it resets all the value to the default value. So if the default value is blank, the form element will become blank. But if you have set any default value for that form element, that input type at the form element will change to that specific default value. Type as radio is used to specify a radio button, and name of radio buttons in the same group should be same. And the name is very meaningful. Just like you might have used radio, a radio transmitter or a radio device in which you can listen songs from different radio stations. But at a time, you can listen song from one radio station only. Similarly, a radio button is a collection of buttons, and at a time you can select only one button from the given option. So if you have a group of buttons that is part of the same group and you are using radio attribute for the input, so the name of all the radio buttons should be same. Suppose I am having 3 radio buttons with the same name, then only one of the 3 can be selected. And suppose if I am having 3 radio buttons with different name, you can select all of them together. Checkbox. Checkbox attribute to the type is used to create checkbox buttons. So unlike radio buttons, checkbox can be selected. All the checkbox options can be selected at the same time. So radio is used to provide single selection, and checkbox is used to provide multiple selections. You have to use a value attribute with radio and checkbox. And whenever you select a specific radio button or you select a specific checkbox and clicks on the submit button of the form, this value of the checkbox or this value of the radio button is returned. Type as button, so it defines a button itself. Type as color, it defines a color picker. Type as date defines a date picker. You can specify type as email, which is used to make it as a text field for email. Whenever you click the submit button, it verifies whether the text provided in the email is in a correct format or not. That means it should have an @ and a dot symbol in the name. Type as image is used to define an image as submit button. So type as image is also a button, but here you can specify an image as the submit button. Type as file lets you select a specific file from your system. Type as hidden is used to provide a hidden input field. Now hidden input field is not shown on the browser. You won't be able to see this input field on the browser, but it is basically used if you want to provide any specific value that will be calculated at the server side or at the client side, but you don't want to show that value on the web browser or the web page. Though this value will not be shown, if the user clicks on the page source, right click on the web page and go to page source, then definitely the user can see what is the hidden field and what is the value provided to it. Type as month defines a month and year picker. So with that you can specify a picker over there and the user can select a specific month or a specific year from it. Type as number defines a number input field. So you cannot provide any other value other than the number over there. So it's pretty much of talk, and now it's time to see the things practically. Hey guys, so here we are on our VS Code, and let's create few HTML files for various input types. So for the first file, I'm going to show you input type text, password, submit and reset button. So let me create the file as input types1.html, and let me quickly add the standard structure of an HTML page over here. So here we are with the basic structure. Now as you can see, I have added the form element, and inside the form element, the first element that I'm going to add is an input type with text. This one we will accept as full name of the user. So let me give it an ID as full name, and let me add a BR over here, and I will provide the same ID in the label so that that label can look for this certain field, and in the label I will provide the value as full name. Let me save this file and let's open this file to see the output. So here's the input text type, in which we can certainly enter a certain kind of text. Let me create one more text type where I will accept username as well. So let me just copy paste this one and let me change it to username, and I will ask for username as well, and here you go. So here user can enter his username. Let's suppose Amit Proper Tutorials and something like that. I can add one more space to it, so let me just add one more BR, so there should be certain amount of space between these two text fields. Now I'm going to show you another input type which is for password. So let me just copy paste these lines, and this one is for password. Now for the password, the input type is also password. So let me type in password over here, and here the whatsoever you are going to enter will not be shown to the user. The next two types that I am going to show you are actually buttons, but we are inserting button with help of input type itself. So I'm just copying this one. The first type is submit and the second type is reset. Now you can easily find the submit and reset button over here. Now reset button is useful when you are clicking on it. It's going to reset the values of the input type. When we will click on submit, it's going to submit the value. Now the value is submitted basically depending upon the place we mentioned to the form. Now we can submit it either to a server, but submitting the value to a server is quite beyond the scope of this syllabus. What we are going to do in future, we will accept these values in a JavaScript file, and there we are going to do some sort of manipulations on it. But till then we will just create these forms. So these were the few input types that we have seen in the first file. Now let me show you some more input types. So let me just create another input type files. I will name it as input types2.html. And actually in the previous file I have missed one of the T while entering the name. So let me just rename that as well. Now in input types 2, I am going to copy paste the code from input types 1 itself. Let me change the tab name, and there are few more changes that I am going to do here. First of all, I am going to use radio button. So here I can create a radio button, and this radio button I am giving to you to choose gender. So let me give it a label as gender. The ID of this radio button will be gender itself, and we can give a name to it. So let me just remove the rest of the code from here to show you how it appears right now. So let me just save it, go to input types 2. Now you can see the radio button is there, but this radio button is not having any name to it. So let me provide a name to this specific radio button, but prior to that, let me provide a name over here as well. Now this name which I am giving right now, it will be gender itself. It won't appear. Now we have already known that actually names or any label is used with the label field. So when we are dealing with radio button, we will have different radio buttons. So let me create another radio button over here, and this will be again for gender, but these two are two different radio buttons, right? So if I will save it, there will be two radio buttons over here. Now these are two different radio buttons, so they should have two different IDs. So this one will be for male and this one will be for female. Okay, so there will be two different radio buttons with two different IDs, and they will have two different labels as well. So let me change this label for male and let me give another label here that is for female. So for different radio buttons you can have values like that, and with the radio buttons it's good to have label just after the radio button itself. So I'm putting the label after the radio button. Now this gives a good look, but we also need to tell the user that they are actually choosing a specific gender by clicking on it. So we will provide a paragraph before this. So let me put a paragraph over here as gender, and now this gives it a more sense. Now the interesting part here is there are two radio buttons, as you can see, both are having different IDs, both are having different labels. Now this should also look for female ID itself. So this certain label is for this certain radio button and this certain label is for this certain radio button. But you have seen that I have given the same name to both of them, and that is why these are acting as radio button. That means you can select any one of them. If you will change the name of the radio button, let's suppose I give it as gender and gender 1, then you can select both of them, which is actually not the behavior of a radio button. So when you are having a group of radio buttons and you want the user to select any one of them, make sure that the name of all those radio buttons should be same, then they all will belong to one certain group. Each radio button will have a different label. The ID of the radio button and the for attribute value should match. So that's how you are linking to a radio button to a specific label. Now the next one that we are going to see is actually a checkbox. Now the difference between a radio button and a checkbox is we use a checkbox so that user can do multiple selection. So if we are dealing with a radio button, user can select only one value from it. But if we are dealing with checkboxes, user can make multiple selection. That means user can select more than one values. So let me create a checkbox over here. So for the checkbox, we will create input type. Let me add one more BR. So we will have an input type. The type of the input will be checkbox. And let me provide it for a subject. So let me give it a subject name as English. So I'm giving the ID as English, and you can give different names to this checkbox as well. So I'm going to create 5 checkboxes over here for different subjects like English, Hindi, Maths, Science and Social Science. I will change the name as well. So you can see I have 5 checkboxes and I can check on all of them. Now what will happen if I will provide same name to 2 different checkboxes? Well, there won't be any difference. Even if you will provide the same name, it won't work like a radio button, so don't worry about that. But definitely these checkboxes should also have some name so that user can understand what this certain checkbox is referring to, right? So let me provide labels over here as well. So just like I have provided labels to the radio button, I will provide labels to these checkboxes as well. The ID of the checkbox and the ID of the label should match, and similarly I will create labels for all the rest of the checkboxes. So let me do that for you. And just like I have added a paragraph, I will add a paragraph over here as well. So let me add a paragraph over here and let me give option like choose subject. So this is how you can add checkboxes and how you can add a radio button. The point of caution I have already mentioned, but let me tell you one more thing which we have missed at all these places. So whenever you are having a radio button, whenever you are having a checkbox, it's good to provide a value attribute to them. Now what will be this value attribute do? Now this is the value that we will get if this radio button is checked. So when this radio button is checked, it should give a value male. Similarly, when this radio button should be checked, it should give a value female. So this is the value that this certain component will return when it is selected. That's why it's good to provide values to these input fields, to the checkbox input field, to the radio button input field when you are dealing with them. So let me provide values to all of them. And that's it. So our checkbox and radio button is ready. Definitely when we will add them into form and when we will click on the submit, they will be submitted. Hey guys, sorry for the interruption. As I don't want this video to be lengthy, hence I'm covering it into 2 parts. This is the first part, and the rest of the components and the rest of the tags we are going to discuss in the next part. So see you soon in the next video. Thank you and take care.